from over 200 companies that's purpose-built to prepare and support leaders who are building the future of equitable, socially responsible business by connecting them to communities, the experts, and the resources that they need to make better decisions on behalf of their organizations and stakeholders. We're featured by Digiday today. Very happy about that. So please do check that out as part of their Future of Work series. But speaking of the future of everything here, I am proud to be here today in conversation with Kathleen Murphy, who is the Director of Digital Strategy at GivingTuesday. I will start off, though, by not asking Kathleen a question, but by asking the audience a question. And I think there should be a way for everyone to do this in the chat. I'd actually be curious to see who is familiar with GivingTuesday. That'd be great to signal that in the chat. GivingTuesday's been around for a while, so I hope there are a lot of you are. I'd also like to see who has supported it in some way, either personally or professionally. And I'm also curious as to who thinks maybe they know the origin story of GivingTuesday, because it is a absolutely fascinating one.
And whether they know it or not, I'm about to go off and tell the whole story. So
this is great.
I hope y'all are prepared.
Keep those responses coming. It'll be helpful to guide the conversation. With that said, Kathleen, why don't you share with the audience what the true history of GivingTuesday is?
I appreciate that. Folks generally seem to know us as that fundraising day that happens once a year at the end of November, and we are so much bigger than that. So I hope you'll oblige me. I want to talk a little bit about who the heck it is that we are, the history of GivingTuesday, which I think is fascinating. I hope you all do. And give a little glimpse into our own brand purpose journey, because I think that we've learned some things over the years, and I'd like to share those things with all of you, if you'll oblige me. So you probably know GivingTuesday started as a day for anyone, anywhere to give, and it's really grown into the largest social movement of all time, if we quantify it by reach. There's activity happening in literally every single country, every territory, every continent on the planet. This past GivingTuesday, we raised $2.47 billion in 24 hours. We're still astonished with a B. We are still like, I still can't get that number out of my mouth. It blows my mind every single time. $2.5 billion pumped into the social sector in 24 hours. But beyond that, and the more important part for us, are the millions of people from around the world who are giving back in whatever way that they're able to. It doesn't have to be monetary. We had people last year filling community fridges, signing up for volunteer shifts, companies closing up shop and going off on adventures to go help their community. And all of the countless little tiny acts of kindness that really add up to something huge. So the whole thing started with a harebrained idea, to be frank. Our team said, you know what, we have Black Friday, Cyber Monday, they are just taking over. What happens if we add GivingTuesday? What if could you add a day that reversed that trend? Like, what, after all this consumerism, could we add a day where people would give back? And the part that was novel about the way that we designed it, we kicked it off from the start in a way that we hoped would give people agency, and that they would grab onto it and take it somewhere new. And the thing that was so interesting about GivingTuesday, as we watched this grow from the very first days, it was always a story about other people stepping up and raising their hand and saying, I want to steal this idea and make it better. Our co-founder, Henry Timms, wrote a book about GivingTuesday and other such things. It's called New Power. It's great. You should read it. One of the examples that we talk about in there is Tetris versus Minecraft, right? Tetris was very old power. You're literally dropping things on people's heads and expecting them to do something with it. Versus Minecraft, which is built from the bottom up. It's a totally new power approach. People around the world collaborate on doing things like building replicas of world cities and creating new things and whatever it is the heck that they're doing on there. And we think that the path forward, both in the social sector and every sector, is for orgs and companies to lean into new power, to invite people in. We have a generation of people who are expecting that they can shape the world on their terms, not yours, right? In the old power world, we used to ask people to either comply or consume. That was it. And in this new power world, there's a set of new behaviors that I think people expect to be invited into: sharing, adapting, co-creating along with you. So we built Giving Tuesday with a distributed leadership model, which at the time, 2012, was completely novel. No one owns Giving Tuesday, not even our organization. It is not trademarked. It is completely open source, to the point where we put the original art files of our logo on our website. You can go there right now and download them, and hopefully you'll create something new with them. It's one of the best parts about Giving Tuesday. The people and organizations and the brands who make Giving Tuesday happen each year are just regular people from all over the world who feel a connection to our mission and to our brand purpose, and they replicate it in an authentic way within their own communities. And they share resources. We are big on coalition building, which I want to talk to you more about. The idea that we can collaborate and should be collaborating more and better throughout the years is what's gonna get us there.
Yep. So the Giving Tuesday itself is a movement, really, with a brand, right?
Yeah.
Not a brand created movement. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
So
the evolution of Giving Tuesday's brand purpose has evolved a lot. And it's all been our community that has shaped this, right? Frankly, we really did start off as a hashtag experiment. I'll never forget those early days when we're sitting in the conference room of 92nd Street Y and some old biddy says, what's £sign Giving Tuesday? Do we have to include the hashtag as part of the name? Is this a thing that is going to stick around? What's the deal? But once this took off globally and we saw it becoming an annual tradition and that people were genuinely latched onto this thing, our thinking started to evolve. This was so much more than a fundraising day. We started to think about what are the implications of instilling a habit of generosity in an entire society and in an entire generation? Does that increase pro-social behavior across the board? We learned that it does. And these days we're thinking even beyond that, like, can we harness the power of radical generosity? And by radical generosity, we think of that as the concept that the suffering of others should be as intolerable to us as our own suffering. It focuses our efforts on love, offers hope, and it finds new ways of healing at the root of our issues. So nowadays, increasing the amount of money in the social sector isn't our end goal at all. Our end goal is to create a world where the social sector doesn't even need to exist. To reimagine our world from the ground up, together with our whole community, not just us in a silo, as a place where we don't just work harder to alleviate all of these harms, but one where we don't tolerate them in the first place. To center others in the smallest and most mundane aspects of our lives. It's a really huge, enormous purpose, but it's what our community came up with together, our global folks who run Giving Tuesday. We didn't just develop it in a silo. We have to all be working toward that same North Star, or it's just not going to work.
So you guys have become a bit of a it's almost like an item of clothing a brand can don.
Yeah.
It's
a good analogy.
To demonstrate, right, their commitment. But we change clothes. I mean, you haven't seen the same pants that I've been wearing for a week straight. But
and we each have our own style.
That's right. That's correct. But we are here to talk about brand purpose, and I don't think that we can address that with also talking about accountability, right? And part of the conversation that preceded us, the point was made that, like, you can't just like start saying something about something and then abandon it, right? Like, or just pretend that was a campaign, right, that you're still not fighting for. So I think it's fair to say that we are in an age of accountability. So with everyone's, like, you're talking about the open sourcing of Giving Tuesday, I would argue that we've also had an open sourcing of information, right? The access that all of us have to information to be able to understand what is just performance and what is practice. like there could be a big chasm between those two things.
Absolutely.
According to Edelman's last trust barometer survey, they said that, and this is fascinating, that business, of which brands are the front facing portal to, it's the only institution that still has any public storage of trust at all. They're at a kind of 61% level, which is remarkable, actually. And maybe a commentary on all the other institutions that we have here in America, but 86% of those respondents of that survey, they expect CEOs to publicly speak out on societal challenges, right? Like 68% of people expect companies to step in when the government doesn't fix those problems. Why is it, do you think, again, in your experience with GivingTuesday and being a platform for brands to plug into, why do people trust companies now more than any other institution of all things?
I don't know. I don't know. But I don't expect that to go away at all anytime soon, ever. And so I think our opportunity is to lean into that, right? Brand purpose has to start with a deep emotional connection to an issue, and it has to be authentic to the lived experience of that, right? And center and support the activists that are working in that space already. It has to be authentic.
Yeah, well, what works for GivingTuesday, and maybe for nobody else, is that GivingTuesday is us. It's not you, right? It's us, because it is completely open source. But companies are finite. They have borders around them, literal walls. We'll get back to those eventually. But they also have leaders, right? And people are holding these leaders accountable for those decisions as well. With GivingTuesday, I like the kind of joint accountability, right? Or the pressure that it puts on us to like give more, right, than somebody else, and it is contagious. But it works the other way too. So Porter Novelli did a study very recently on cancel culture, and I know that is a phrase that has taken on a lot of different meanings, and I would argue it's become weaponized to the point of destruction. Yeah. But what it did reveal was that 38%. No, right, because we all have a voice. To your point, right? So 38% of Americans said that they would cancel, and again, whatever that means to them, a company to get it to change its ways. So it's no longer about just like voting with your wallet, right? It's holding companies accountable. And I think a lot of individuals, especially younger people, have taken on that agency to do that and to step in maybe where other measures of accountability have failed. So what turned at what point in all of this, were consumers turned into activists? Because I think at one point we thought of consumers in one camp, activists that, kind of in some other camp on a Greenpeace boat out in the middle of the ocean. But those two things are coming together. Like even activists are building their own brands. So what happened? What triggered that?
I don't know. It's been in the past couple of years for sure. Like I see it from the examples of brand GivingTuesday campaigns and the nature of those types of campaigns. And they've been getting increasingly more and more active over the past couple of years, I would say, definitely last year for sure, which we love to see. Yeah. In the old days, it was the old days of GivingTuesday. It was enough for a brand to simply post on their social media page about one nonprofit that their employees give to, or toss a couple $1,000 to that nonprofit. But these activations are getting bigger and bigger and more active and more interesting, frankly, which we're thrilled to see.
Yep. As an organization, how are you guys? I mean, I know you're thinly staffed, as is the whole point of this. But where does is there a true marketing function inside of GivingTuesday?
Not really, no. We view ourselves as not the keepers of the movement. Our role is to pick up all the pieces that are scattered around the world and organize everyone together and connect all of these leaders together who are the actual people who pull off GivingTuesday every year, and support them by building coalitions and networks and connecting the dots on things. If there's somebody in India who's working on something that's directly relevant to somebody who, one of our leaders who is in rural Arkansas, we're in a unique place to be able to make those kind of connections. And that's our role. The leaders who put off Giving Tuesday are the ones who are the marketers and the amplifiers and the megaphone for this movement.
So given your perspective is coming at this from a non-traditionally structured organization, one that doesn't just is different than the status quo, but is really attempting to buck the status quo.
That's what we say. That's what we're out to do.
Yeah. So in so many other companies or organizations that are traditionally structured, right? A lot of times we talk about the notion of purpose or impact, it's coming through the mouths of the most vocal advocates of all of that, who also tend to be somewhat in marketing, right? Because a lot of this is reputational, right? Companies do a lot in many ways, and it's also transactional to get a lot in terms of reputation and build their reputation as a company who is generous or who is thinking about the environment. Reminder, today is Earth Day, right? So a lot of this happened, but oftentimes we're seeing, and I'm seeing, especially in the hundreds of companies that we talk to every day, that oftentimes purpose is housed within marketing. Is that sustainable? Can you hold marketing, who has its own set of KPIs and OKRs or whatever an acronym you want to use for it, can they be held accountable for the purpose of a company, or does it live, at a higher order inside the organization?
I think it's got to live with everybody. For it to be authentic, it has to start right in your own backyard, and the whole business has to be on board, right? From the ground up, with buy-in at every single level, and staff and employee given agency to help shape whatever it is that your brand purpose becomes from the very beginning. I think is going to be the way that it's going to be most successful in the end.
Yep. So it's a shared responsibility,
shared.
Which I think draws a lot of parallels to something that I think a lot of people here in the audience have experienced in their business or digital transformation journeys, right? Where, the kind of awkwardness of the first step of that journey is saying, all right, we have a digital problem. Let's hire a chief digital officer. In the same way as a lot of companies say we have a diversity problem, let's hire a diversity officer. What all of us probably learned through that first transition or transformation journey was that it is ultimately the CEO's job, right? Which is, you could say it's all of our jobs, but it all flows upstream, right? And so it's ultimately the CEO's job to do. So I guess how do we compel, what is the case to be made internally at an organization to make this a higher order initiative? That brand is just one way of communicating what that initiative is, or the great stories about the impact that the company has made. How do we sell it through? Because being a change agent inside of a company is very lonely.
It's a very lonely place. So I mean, it has to be all of us. It has to be a bigger than just one person at the bottom. It's a process and a journey. It's taken us.
I think a lot of people feel the failures sometimes, the small failures. We have small victories with all this stuff too, right? But the small failures, which are worth learning from just as much, if not more,
Absolutely.
than the victories. About the difference between, again, a purpose and accountability, right? The accountability is probably the reconciliation of your truth in your purpose, the authenticity of your purpose as perceived by everybody else. So what would be your advice to companies who are currently, for example, playing defense on that, right? Who are feeling the weight of being held accountable for their actions, behaviors, their decisions, whether the decisions they've made or not made, especially, when there is a bright, shiny object of an injustice or inequity that is, permeating the news cycle, and a statement or a response is expected, but so is action, right? And so what's your advice to somebody who is, probably shouldering that burden within a company?
Yeah.
And probably disproportionately is shouldering that burden because they're the victim, or are suffering as a result of a decision or a lack of a decision that a company has made. Because inevitably the voice of the employee, I feel like given the social media platforms we all have and the distribution of everybody, right? From a workforce perspective due to COVID is like, that's a vulnerability, right? Like,
Yeah.
so like, how do you keep all of that under control and how do you like raise it up?
I mean, it's hard. I think we're going to have to be bold.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to have to try things that we wouldn't normally try and be okay with the failure that is inevitably going to happen, right? That has to be okay. And we have to try and we are going to fail and that's going to be okay.
So that would mean probably, it sounds like a good way to do that. And you mentioned this before in the form of coalition, right? Is like bringing people together.
Yeah.
Bringing companies together to raise the bar. I think one of the interesting things about Giving Tuesday is that, yes, everyone can do something on their own, and that makes it almost infinitely scalable. Collaboration doesn't necessarily scale that well because collaboration requires coordination. So are you guys looking at that also as you kind of grow and evolve? And in the hopes that, you know, the actions of a lot of companies are great, but what happens when companies work together to raise the bar and set new standards by working together?
I mean, what happens is a lot. And
Yeah.
I think we have to be working faster together, in more active ways together. And we have to tear down these silos because we are not going to get there unless we're doing it together.
So when you guys are out there, speaking of doing things together, when you guys are out there, like Giving Tuesday is obviously inherently a non-political organization, but everything has felt in these last, I don't know, for at least years, like really political. Or people will claim something that might be an argument or a case for not just social, but like justice, but human rights, right? But those are inherently made to be political conversations. So what's your advice to brands or the people here about, you know, whose organizations say like stay out of politics, but are having trouble avoiding the issues?
You might not be able to stay out of politics.
Yeah.
It just may not be possible. So many social issues, especially here in the United States, are just plain so political because I think people conflate those terms, social issues with politics. We're going to have to lean into it and we're going to have to own it and we're going to have to be bold and we're going to have to do it anyway and stand up for whatever we have decided our brand values are. And we're going to have to just do it.
Yeah. How do you guys, how transparent are you guys with what you do and the way you do it?
Transparent in the way that we share everything, literally, absolutely everything. We're transparent in the way that we quantify how much we raised on Giving Tuesday, how much the social sector raised on Giving Tuesday. We have these past 10 years have been completely transparent about how and why and where the movement has changed. It's one of our favorite things to do, to come talk to people about the changes that are happening in Giving Tuesday land and what we're seeing and the data that we're seeing. And we share every single tool that has ever come through Giving Tuesday. We're building a wiki now to house everything better because it is really kind of in disparate lands at this moment, but we're working on that.
I was actually curious about that, as to how you actually technologically do that. And that sounds like a great way to do it. So is that a wiki that you guys only have contributor power over, or are you going to invite other people to contribute to it?
No, we're hoping. No, we actually don't want anything to do with it at all. Like, we'll pay for the hosting and everything, but ideally our folks and our leaders and the people who are raising up their hand to do Giving Tuesday and lead it in their various communities are going to be the ones to own this project.
Including, I imagine, the companies who have supported Giving Tuesday is sharing like best practices and, you know, what they've seen be effective for them. There's got to be a lot of knowledge.
There's so much, and we're working on consolidating and streamlining it and making it easier to find and use. Because at this point, 10 years in, there's just so much of it at this point that it's hard. But that's the whole thing. We are only going to get there faster if we are willing to share our knowledge with each other, with our insights with each other, and build those kind of coalitions. which is why I am obsessed with what you all are doing at Kindred.
Thank you. I'm here to interview you though.
Eh,
There were actually two Giving Tuesdays last year,
there were
which is
two Giving
fascinating,
Tuesdays last
right?
year.
So, can you talk a little bit, like, real quickly about that before we get to Q&A? Because I think that might be confusing for some, but I actually found it to be utterly fascinating, and it probably gave you a lot of learnings to apply to this coming Giving Tuesday.
Yeah. So it was an anomaly, right? It was February or so. We start to watch this pandemic roll its way across the world.
Yep.
There's 70 Giving Tuesday countries, and they're all on a WhatsApp chat. And we've been watching them and listening and talking with them since February. Like, hey, this thing's real and it's coming and it's going to have profound implications. And we started to think like, hey, I think we need to do something. This is going to wreak havoc on the social sector. It's going to wreak havoc on people and loneliness and all of those things. And what can we do as Giving Tuesday? The thing that we do best, which is leverage and mobilize communities to get out there and do something. So we decided, our team had an emergency meeting. I think it was a Sunday. I don't know. We had lost all track of time. All of us said, you know what,
We all
we're gonna do it. Like, what better thing to do at this moment than pull off an emergency Giving Tuesday? So we did an emergency Giving Tuesday in less than 4 weeks. I'm still baffled by how all of this happened, but it's a testament to the power that we all have of generosity and stepping in and working together. This community pulled this off in 4 weeks. And we raised as much as we did on regularly scheduled Giving Tuesday. We had no idea what would happen. People were decorating their towns with beautiful messages on the sidewalk for people that they will never meet. Like, hey, it's going to be okay. And love is with all of us, everywhere from like Toronto to Italy to China. It was an amazing moment of solidarity. I was proud and honored to be a part. We're in fact Webby nominated for that moment. So I'm going to hassle you all for votes, please. It was an amazing thing to be part of, and just the fact that it happened so quickly and so widespread around the world in such short order, we're amazed, astonished to this day.
That's awesome. And so do you think it's going to be, with this Giving Tuesday happening, so just let everybody know the date of this year's Giving Tuesday, first of all.
November 30th, 2021.
There you go. Is it going to be different in years past, given where the world may be as a society and the state of our population in the context of like vaccinations
Absolutely.
and pandemic and things like that?
I mean, absolutely. Every single Giving Tuesday has been a little bit different than the previous one. And that's the thing that we look forward to most, frankly, to see what ways generosity is changing and what ways people are giving differently. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't do predictions. We study what happens after the fact, but we refuse to do predictions because it's impossible, especially in times like these.
Yeah.
But
I'm going to get to a couple of questions here from the audience. And then I probably have 3 hours worth of questions for you, but they're not going to give us 3 hours. No. So I guess, do you think that things change? I guess this is an extension of the last question, that that when things eventually get back to normal, whatever that means, normal or otherwise, how do you think what you do will have changed permanently as a result of the last 18 months?
In 1,000 different ways, and it's changing already. Yeah. We've always been focused on non-monetary giving, but I think that's even more so important than ever. We have to think of generosity as all of it in every single thing that we do, in every moment, whether it's pausing an extra second at the stoplight. That generosity has to be there everywhere. And increasing that, we think, is going to increase other pro-social behaviors. and change our entire world. And generosity is not the means to the end, we like to say. That's the mechanism that we're going to use to change our entire world.
I like the notion of generosity. I love it, but I like it because it's inclusive of philanthropy. And I think that, like, historically, philanthropy has been looked at inside of organizations as a way of doing things, like a way of giving back, like the most literal way of giving back, which historically has really worked because a lot of nonprofits, their existential crisis is fundraising. So, like, in theory, the companies that give more, like, that benefits society by, nonprofits getting more. But when cash is not necessarily the only thing, right? I think what we see is that, like, a lot of nonprofits work and are successful because they're providing partnership to companies, not just, a way for the companies to, like, at worst launder their reputation, or at best be generous. It's not just about money. It's about logistics, like Feeding America, for example, like taking excess waste, food waste from companies, which that would otherwise be a cost to those companies, right? There's some real logistical partnerships being found. So when you talk about generosity, are you trying to change that paradigm around companies, like saying, like, this is not just about the traditional concept of check writing philanthropy, but about giving more than just money?
Absolutely. And what can you do that's innovative that might not have anything to do with money at all? But, like, do you have a piece of your business or your infrastructure that you can loan to a nonprofit? Giving Tuesday now, somebody loaned their whole trucking system to transport food from rural farmers, which they paid for, to food banks. It was amazing. No money exchanged, but loaning infrastructure. Generosity has to be much bigger than simply giving dollars.
Yep. So so when companies are thinking, again, when companies are thinking about their brand purpose, I think it's very clear that they should be thinking about, like, what the selfless work that they, right, the things that they give, not just the stuff that they make, the assets that they have, and who else that might be valuable to.
Yep.
Right. And probably that includes their people. Right. And so, like, giving is not just about giving assets, resources, or money. It's time.
Time and talent too. That's another popular way to get involved with Giving Tuesday. I'll see marketing teams loan their talents, their graphic designer, the web designer, everybody, to help a nonprofit figure out their own Giving Tuesday campaign. There's so many different ways to get involved.
Have you looked at, and this is just, like, again, I'm obsessed with like the ROI of all of this, right? And not just in terms of, like, profit and or revenue, but just all of the other, like, tangible and intangibles that go along with it, including, like, improving trust, with consumers, in building something that is laser focused on one day, right? With the amount of good that you've done or able to do on that one day, do you see that, or have you even measured that the companies, organizations who support Giving Tuesday wind up doing and giving more the other 364 days a year?
I'm glad you asked that. We have a data department that I don't know that anyone realizes exists. They're amazing. And it's part of the thing that we do all year round, is studying the implications of not only Giving Tuesday, but generous behavior in general across the board. They're studying all kinds of different things. We post it on our website, as you can guess. And there are tools that can be used by anyone to shape what it is that they're going to do, how they're going to give back personally, professionally, research for the nonprofit sector. They're amazing.
So I guess the moral of that is that for companies who do want to get involved with Giving Tuesday, that it should be the beginning of something and not the culmination of something, right?
Exactly.
So what's the best way for, for companies or brands or people that are here in the audience to get involved with Giving Tuesday right now?
GivingTuesday.org. You're going to see a pop-up on there that has you vote for a Webby. You can do that.
I thought you were going to say asking you to accept cookies.
No, no, I just want the Webby vote. That's all I need from you right now. Forget the cookies. And then I have a whole hub for how small businesses, brands, companies can get involved in Giving Tuesday. There's case studies for how brands and companies have gotten involved in the past. As you can guess, I picked my favorites to show you, but they're all there. Toolkits, ideas.
And so with the
Start there.
event, with Giving Tuesday being in November, it's not too early, in other words.
Not at all. Not at all, because if you're going to pull off something authentic that connects to your brand purpose, that sort of work starts now. And
Yep.
if you don't have an authentic brand purpose or what it is that your values are to begin with, you need to do some work on that now, right?
You know what I'm going to do? Actually, I'm going to help you out here.
Thanks.
I am going to drop the Giving Tuesday Webby link in the chat.
Thanks.
Because I want everybody in here voting for you and supporting you.
And doing something on Giving Tuesday. We'd love to have you.
Here we go. This is going to everybody. Vote, please. So the last question I have for you is, what are you looking forward to most for this year's Giving Tuesday? Again, given that it'll be the first Giving Tuesday post vaccination for a lot of people, or at least the opportunity to become vaccinated.
And I mean, I'm hoping that we can live in a world where we can get together again. Yeah. Usually on Giving Tuesday, we have a big headquarters celebration. Yeah. Our team, we're literally distributed. None of us live in the same city. We don't ever see each other except for once a year. In previous years, we'd sometimes get together quarterly or have little regional meetups or something. But Giving Tuesday was always our day for our team to finally, after working on Slack for a year, to give each other a hug. So that is the thing that I'm hoping is able to happen this year.
When you know, actually, I have an interesting question for you, and this is actually personally, and I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about this. In keeping that group engaged, or you mentioned Slack, you mentioned WhatsApp. So clearly, like as an inherently distributed organization that was there, like that was distributed before a pandemic.
It was cool to be distributed. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what's the lesson? What is a lesson that some of the folks here can take away as it pertains to like the energy level, the morale, like all of that happening, including whether or not like doing good has anything to do with that? Because I think it does.
Absolutely. In the early days of the pandemic, we spent a lot of time fielding these questions from nonprofits who are trying to get used to, okay, what does remote work look like? I don't even understand. And you use the tools that you have available to you, and you come up with creative ways to help each other out and connect with each other, and you be creative.
Yeah. So it sounds like Giving Tuesday would be a great way for people to engage their teams in something that can really bring them together, even if they're apart.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time, Kathleen.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much to Brand Innovators. If you have any questions about what we've been doing in Kindred, feel free to visit kindredmembers.com. Definitely visit givingtuesday.org. And please do vote for Giving Tuesday in those Webbies. I could tell you they deserve it. So thanks again for your time, and speak to you soon.
Thank you both so much for an amazing chat. Everyone, please go to the